I'm Bob Waldinger. I'm here with Angie Thurston, and we are honored to be here as part of the call to unite. I'll just introduce myself briefly. I'm a psychiatrist at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston and Harvard Medical School. And I direct a study that is the longest study of adult life that's ever been done. It's been going for 82 years, following the same people through their entire lives. And I'm also a Zen priest and teacher. And all those things come together as a way to study the experience of being human through the lenses of science, through working with my patients, through teaching Zen meditation. And now I'm happy to introduce Angie Thurston, who will tell you a little bit about herself.
Good morning, Bob.
Good morning.
With you. I'm Angie Thurston, and I'm the co-founder of Sacred Design Lab and a fellow at Harvard Divinity School. And it's so wonderful to be with you, Bob, today, because I think our work overlaps in some ways. My work is all about helping to bring us closer. And that starts with the inner life in terms of getting more at home in our own minds, in our inner spirits, and then in our relationships, getting closer to our friends, our family, our community, and also getting closer to what we long for, the world we imagine, and the sense of purpose to put our gifts in service of that world. So, Bob, you and I are here to answer this call to unite by exploring what it means to be close in a time of distance, right? And so I'll ask you, what are you noticing about ourselves and our relationships right now?
Well, it's such an unusual time,
Right.
and that it's a time that fosters both unusual closeness and unusual distance because our lives have been frozen in a way by this pandemic,
Yeah.
uh, and in ways that we never thought would happen. So, with closeness, most of us never signed up for being with the people we live with 24/7.
Right.
Wasn't how our relationship started. Um, and so one of the things I'm noticing is that we're all having to establish new routines. What is it like to be together all day long instead of being able to go our separate ways for a while and come back? The other thing is that with distance, many of our important relationships have been interrupted. So it's hard to keep relationships going that we're used to uh, sustaining by connecting with each other in person. Some of us might be just starting a romance. Some of us might be building new relationships at work, and suddenly we're all locked down. And what happens then is that we're all under a great deal of stress, not just from our worries about the pandemic, but because of the stress that it's putting on our relationships. And I've noticed two things that are happening there. One is that we can start feeling like things are wrong. We can start blaming ourselves. We can start blaming each other. I'm not doing this right. My roommate or my partner isn't
Right.
doing thing right. The other thing that happens is that there's spillover, that we read the news, we get anxious, and suddenly we're more irritable when we turn to the person we live with. So I think it's really important not to push these feelings away, to let them come, but to recognize that they are normal, nothing to be frightened of, nothing to be ashamed of.
Oh, I relate to this so much. My husband and I are spending more time together now than we have in the history of our marriage, right? And I think that that is a common, no matter who you're quarantining with. So I'm so with you, Bob. And I think one of the things that I'm noticing is that this pandemic is causing a lot of us to reevaluate our priorities. Because even before it started, we were already facing a crisis of isolation and loneliness in the US and many parts of the world, which wasn't just being about which wasn't about being physically apart. It was about a lack of meaningful connection, right? And to ourselves, to our relationships, our sense of purpose. And so I'm noticing that for many of us, this feels like somewhat a time of reckoning where we're facing that sense of disconnection and asking, what do I do about this? Because I'm realizing my sanity depends on it. So, for instance, a lot of folks are trying things like meditation for the first time. I heard that almost half of Gen Z, our youngest generation, has started a new spiritual practice during this time. And we're identifying the people in our inner circle and pulling them tighter, sometimes even releasing old grudges in order to do it. And I think we're asking what's mine to do here, right? Knowing that I'm stressed and scared, but I also recognize I feel better when I'm doing something to remind me of our shared connection and that everyone else is going through this too. So that makes me wonder, Bob, given all that shifting, what do you think it would be helpful for people to keep in mind right now?
Well, I think one thing is to remember that we need to give each other space when we're living at such close quarters,
Mhm.
and not to make each other wrong, but just to remember that we're all under stress and that we're all going to get through this together. And that there's nothing wrong with our relationships if we need space from each other. And similarly with isolation, that we need to reach out to each other. The moment you think about reaching out to somebody through a phone call or a text or video chat, do it. Just let yourself do it. And finally, allow yourself to tolerate this great uncertainty that we're all living through now.
Well, I will pick up on that. I'll share that one of my spiritual goals in general is to learn to love one new person every day.
Mm,
And this is a challenge in the best of times, right? This is why it's a goal. Um,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
right now, that may feel way, way out of reach, just given everything that we're experiencing. But our physical distance doesn't mean that we can't reorient our attention toward love. And we know, of course, that fear is disempowering because it puts our attention on a future that we can't control, right? We spend so much energy on what might happen, and most of it never even comes true. Whereas love is empowering because it's actionable. It connects us to this truest place in ourselves in the present and puts our attention there, right, on what matters most. So I've been wondering, what would this time look like if we marked each day with an act of love? And my guess is so many of us are already doing it if we stop to notice, right? It might be small things like you were talking about, a text message to a friend, or it could be an act of self compassion like a bath or a dance party. um,
Mm,
or it might be a note on a neighbor's door, or the cheering in solidarity with healthcare workers, or even, if you are a healthcare worker and you're watching and you're someone who's putting yourself on the line out of love every day, right? These are things that we can focus on. And I think uh, one thing to just encourage is that there might be acts of love that folks are waiting to do, have been waiting to do, and that this is the perfect time. It might be a time where you feel ready to forgive someone in your life who you've been longing to get right with, and you're ready to say, I'm going to be the one to reach out and say, in this crazy time, I want you to know I care too much to let this grudge be the last word, right? And I know you, Bob, have talked about how important that is for our health and happiness.
and Angie, I would say I love that. And if we can just end with one thing, it might be, let your default setting be kindness. That when you can choose, make your response be the kind response.
May it be so.
May it be so. Great to be together with you, Angie.
Likewise.